nature's call, whispers from the eternal void.
Confession Log, Kappa 13 under Inquisitorial Seal, recorded aboard the strike cruiser Penitent's Wrath. I, Sister Superior Magdalena, of the Order of the Valorous Heart, testify to this impossible fact. For 72 hours, my 12 Sisters Repentia have carved identical geometric patterns into their flesh, without command, without sleep, without variance. The scars rise from clavicles in mirrored loops, hook around ribs with 13 precise inflection points, converge in lattices over sternum and throat. Ship's librarium cogitators flagged the symbols as pre-scriptural geometry, predating Imperial Gothic by millennia. They did not look at one another, they did not speak, yet every line matched to the width of a hair. Our destination haunts my thoughts, Dolorum Shrine World, where the entire convent of the Sacred Wound vanished during final mass penitence 3 months prior. The last Vox transmission was a single phrase repeated in perfect 13-part harmony by voices belonging to sisters who had taken eternal silence vows decades earlier. The flesh remembers what the Emperor forgets. The words carried implications that made my augmetic heart skip its regulated rhythm. What could flesh remember that the Master of Mankind chose to forget? The Repentia's scourge wounds began weeping crystalline substance that chimed at precisely 38 hertz. I measured it thrice with litany-singing auspex pressed to Sister Seraphina's sternum, watched the waveform settle like heartbeat on winter sea. 38. The resonant frequency of human bone. My teeth answered the vibration. When tears hardened on Celestine's collarbone, they sang the same note as veins beneath, as if flesh and frost had entered unholy pact. The sisters listened with lowered eyes, breath synchronized as if single lungs drew through 13 ribs. The chapel organs played themselves in response. No servitor at keys, no organist at pedals. Ancient pipes woke in slow measures that bent around crystal hum, threading harmonics between sisters' breaths, as if each inhalation was drawn bow over taut wire. The intervals followed no human musical tradition. Incense smoke reversed, climbing upstream into pipe mouths. Candle flames narrowed as if listening. Frost feathered across reliquary glass in spirals mirroring the cut lines blooming under penitent skin. Environmental readings throughout ship displayed anomalous data. Temperature fluctuations created pockets of intense cold, forming frost patterns on bulkheads. Frost that under magnification revealed the same geometric symbols carved in living flesh. The ship's Geller field, crucial barrier against warp predation, fluctuated in rhythm with Repentia's breathing. 12 women in separate cells had somehow aligned respiratory patterns perfectly, lungs filling and emptying as components of single organism. Geller amplitude variance 0.4, reported Master of Etherics, fear creeping into steel voice. Anomalous harmonics increasing. Correlation with respiration cycles holds. I walked procession way between bone shelf and iron shrine, steadying myself on liturgy. 13 litanies for 13 wounds, I whispered. Behind me, sisters moved under penitent chords. Footfalls aligned in cadence that Vox speed registered as metronome waveform. Engine Seer Prime intercepted my path, red robes flowing, face a rosary of plugs and bronze. Chapel organ registers unauthorized activation, he reported through Binharic static. Harmonics are patterned, not of choir's repertoire. He lifted thrumming crystal with augmetic pincer. This material extrudes from organic incisions. It is not ice. It is not known. It sings. Confessor Havel joined us, graveyard voice cutting through harmonic resonance. These marks precede our letters. I have seen their shadows in forbidden apocrypha. They loop around what we do not say. He looked at Sisters and flinched at nothing visible. "Translation in T-7, announced Etherics. The organ dropped 3 registers, moaning like whale in dead ocean. I led Sisters into chapel where machine choir racks stood empty, servitors sleeping with stitched open eyes. Keys depressed themselves, shivering under invisible hands. Repentia knelt without command beneath pipe bank, cords biting wrists, robes loosened to expose scarred maps their own hands had written in flesh. As penitent's wrath prepared for warp translation, I sought solace in ship's ossuary among relics of martyred saints. Chamber held remains of 47 holy warriors, skulls arranged in precise geometric patterns. When Geller Field engaged and reality tore apart, admitting us into Imperium's screaming madness, every skull in ossuary turned toward lower decks, where Repentia waited. Ancient bones, blessed by ecclesiarchs and anointed with sacred oils, pivoted within sanctified glass until vacant sockets focused on penitent cells 3 decks below. "Translation," Etherics announced, voice knife-width thinner. World folded. Candles became needles, then lines, then drops of black falling upward. Metal flexed like lung. Geller cage flared around us, net of light woven from prayer and mathematics. In that first unbreath of between space, every skull began to sing. They opened mandibles within blessed glass, vertebrae unspooling as if tasting incense. In no voice any throat could make, they sang the phrase that haunted Dolorum's final transmission, their chorus joining crystalline tears and impossible organs in harmony that predated human speech. The flesh remembers what the Emperor forgets. Translation return brought us through Dolorum's ash-heavy atmosphere, like descent through the throat of a dying god. From orbital height, the impossible truth revealed itself in thermal displays and cartographic overlays. The shrine cities spread across continents in perfect geometric mandala patterns, spiraling outward from polar convergence points in loops and lattices identical to the scars carved into my Repentia's flesh. Cities that should have grown organically around water sources and sacred sites instead formed precise mathematical relationships, each settlement positioned at coordinates matching the 13 inflection points rising from Sister Seraphina's clavicle. Surface scans detected no life signs across 17 major population centers, yet thermal imaging painted abandoned cities, pulsing with rhythmic heat signatures synchronized to planetary heartbeat. Every 38 seconds, temperature spikes bloomed from city centers, spreading through empty streets in circulatory patterns before fading to baseline. The rhythm matched exactly the pulse I felt through deck plates when my Repentia breathed in unison, their crystalline tears chiming at 38 hertz in perfect resonance with whatever massive heartbeat beneath Dolorum's scarred surface. "Landing zone secured," reported pilot servitor through Vox grill, crusted with frost formations that hurt to observe directly. "Convent fortress of sacred wounds, bearing 2-7 Mark 8. The Thunderhawk's retro thrusters fired in sequence, lowering us toward landing pad carved from obsidian stone. Through viewport, Dolorum's surface spread like wound map written in ash and geometry, corrosive storms having scoured the landscape for months, yet somehow leaving the city patterns pristine, untouchable by atmospheric acid. Touchdown revealed the first true impossibility. The convent courtyard contained 300 sets of Repentia robes, arranged in ritual circles around crystalline formations, jutting from consecrated ground like frozen screams. The robes showed no signs of decay, despite months of exposure to acid storms that should have dissolved blessed fabric to component molecules. Each garment lay precisely positioned, arms spread in supplication, hoods arranged as if invisible heads still wore them in eternal prayer, fabric retaining faint scent of incense and dried blood. Atmospheric corrosion should have reduced organic fibers to base compounds, muttered Enginseer Prime, scanning robes with augmetic sensors. These register preservation indices as if worn yesterday. He lifted corner of nearest robe with servo claw, revealing perfect weave, unfaded dyes, blessed oils still gleaming on hems where they had been anointed during final ceremonies. Auspex readings returned data that violated basic principles of matter classification. Organic robes registered as mineral compounds with crystalline lattice structures. Stone foundations read as living tissue, complete with circulatory patterns and neural pathways threading through blessed masonry. The crystalline formations sang in harmonic resonance with my Repentia's tears, creating standing waves that made air itself visible as shimmering curtains of sound at exactly 38 hertz. Sister Seraphina rose from restraint harness without command, movements flowing like liturgical dance choreographed by invisible hands. She began removing her robes in precise sequence, each motion mirroring the arrangement of abandoned garments scattered across courtyard. First, the outer robe, folded with ceremony reserved for relics, then the cord of penitence, laid in spiral pattern matching the city arrangements visible from orbit. Her scarred flesh gleamed with crystalline tears that had hardened into geometric jewelry hanging from self-inflicted wounds, each formation singing softly in harmony with the jutting crystals. "Sister, maintain position," I commanded, but she moved as if guided by neural pathways carved in stone and flesh alike. The other Repentia followed her example, disrobing in synchronized ritual that created living mandala around our landing site. Their movements aligned perfectly with empty robes, as if joining ceremony that had begun months earlier and never truly ended. Their breathing synchronizing with planetary pulse until 12 women became components of single organism. Temperature dropped 17 degrees in 30 seconds, creating frost patterns forming religious iconography across metal surfaces. Aquilae and Rosaria etched themselves in ice, but the symbols twisted into geometries that folded back on themselves in ways that made enhanced vision blur and water. The frost symbols matched pre-scriptural patterns carved in Repentia flesh, but viewing them directly caused neural feedback like ice picks driven through optical nerves. Cognitive dissonance that reordered spatial reasoning until familiar became alien. Environmental layering intensified as planetary conditions responded to our presence. Ash storms that had raged for months suddenly stilled, leaving air clear enough to see mountain ranges arranged in same geometric patterns covering my sister's skin. Wind patterns shifted, creating standing vortices that hummed at frequencies resonating with crystalline formations, the very atmosphere recognizing scarred flesh and responding with harmonics predating human understanding. The convent's bells began tolling in sequence, though no human hands touched the ropes. Ancient bronze sang across empty courtyards, each toll resonating through Repentia's crystalline tears, until flesh and metal and stone created single instrument of impossible complexity. 13 strikes in precise intervals corresponding to 13 inflection points, carved into living skin, each chime setting crystalline formations throughout the complex singing in response. As echoes faded across Dolorum's transformed landscape, every crystal formation pulsed brighter, their harmonic resonance building toward crescendo that made the air itself thicken with sound. My Repentia stood motionless in their ritual circles, breathing synchronized with planetary heartbeat, crystalline tears streaming down scarred cheeks in geometric patterns that caught and reflected the singing light. We had not arrived at abandoned world. We had entered ceremony already in progress, ritual that had begun with vanished sisters and now called to their replacements with voices of crystal and bone and sanctified bronze singing harmony human throats were never meant to achieve. The Cathedral of Wounds admitted us like a throat remembering the shape of a blade, its doors parting on hinges that wept pale condensate smelling of myrrh and iron. Inside, impossible architecture revealed itself. Walls of living stone bearing scars of every act of penitence ever performed within these sanctified halls. The flesh stone responded to my Repentia's presence by opening and closing wounds in rhythm with their synchronized heartbeats, creating wave patterns that matched the scarification, covering their bodies with mathematical precision. Each pulse sent ripples through wall flesh, apertures weeping luminescent fluid that traced geometric patterns down consecrated masonry. The cathedral's acoustics violated every principle of imperial construction. Whispered prayers in high Gothic died as ashes, barely audible above crystalline resonance. Yet when Sister Seraphina spoke a single syllable in the pre-Gothic script carved into her flesh, her voice detonated. The cathedral seized it, magnified it, fed it back as thunder that rattled reliquary glass, and made the stone itself sing at 38 hertz. The walls served as resonating chambers designed to respond to frequencies embedded in scarred flesh, rather than spoken word, amplifying ancient tongues that predated human civilization. I observed my sister's transformation accelerating beyond previous manifestation. Their scars began emitting pale light, bioluminescent patterns pulsing in sequence as if neural pathways had been carved into living skin. Expressions shifted between agony and impossible ecstasy, faces cycling through emotions no human countenance should display simultaneously. Pain and rapture merged into single experience, individual identity blurring as scarification created visible connections between separate bodies, light flowing from one sister's wounds to another's in circuits of shared sensation. Ancient confessor-servitors lined the transept, cogitators long dead, yet somehow continuing to record the same confession in endless loop. Parchment scrolled from mechanical scribes covering floor in layers of repeated testimony describing events that had not yet occurred. These servitors have been non-functional for standard months, reported Enginseer Prime, scanning dead machinery with augmetic sensors. Yet they continue producing testimony. The confession describes this moment, our arrival, events occurring now, recorded months past. The litany spoke in voices matching the missing Repentia exactly. Seraphina will offer her hand. She will be remembered. We will become. Body horror escalated as Sister Seraphina's wounds began to sing, her flesh becoming living instrument in symphony of penitence. Each scar opened into resonating chamber, breath flowing through carved channels to produce harmonics human vocal cords could never achieve. Her ribcage served as soundbox, sternum vibrating at frequencies that made air visible as shimmering curtains of sound. Other Repentia joined the flesh chorus, their bodies transforming into components of impossible orchestra, individual voices merging into harmonic complexity that bypassed conscious hearing to resonate directly in bone and nerve. The walls themselves pulsed with veins carrying luminescent fluid instead of blood, circulatory systems threading through blessed masonry in patterns matching scarification on living flesh. The milk-blue substance flowed in rhythm with planetary heartbeat, creating visible connections between architecture and anatomy, stone and skin unified in single organism of worship. Temperature fluctuations followed the pulse, frost forming in warm air while ash fell upward in defiance of gravitational law, localized weather systems manifesting within cathedral space, magnetograv variance rising. Enginseer Prime rasped through Binharic undertone, Vectors aligned to chancel. Gravity fluctuated in specific patterns, pulling my Repentia toward the cathedral's altar in 13-second cycles of heaviness, followed by 9 seconds of near weightlessness, then long 38-count pulses that pinned us like specimens. Each gravitational wave drew the sisters closer, their movements becoming involuntary pilgrimage toward transformation they could not resist, yet welcomed with expressions of transcendent joy. At the altar's heart, a massive crystalline formation grew from consecrated floor like frozen scream, rising 17 meters with faceted surface reflecting scarred flesh in impossible angles. The crystal pulsed with the same 38 hertz resonance as Repentia tears, singing with voices that seemed to emanate from Dolorum's core. Within its translucent depths, shadows trembled at perception's edge, outlines like kneeling penitent forms preserved in mid-supplication, 300 missing sisters suspended in crystalline matrix. Sister Seraphina walked forward, gravity delivering her in measured steps toward completion of circuit broken for months. Her scarred hand extended toward faceted surface as confessor servitors scribing faster, events they had recorded finally coming to pass. Hold position, I ordered, but my voice traveled strangely, splitting into harmonics that returned as command already obeyed and lament already too late. The moment flesh touched crystal, Seraphina's individual voice rang once like bell, then opened, unfolding like flower in winter. Her consciousness joined something infinitely larger, while her physical form remained visible, expression shifting to beatific peace as identity dissolved into collective harmony. Her voice became chorus of 300 others singing from within the stone, harmonic complexity expanding to include her unique frequency while maintaining perfect unity of purpose. The sound arrived from everywhere at once, not through air but through marrow, and the names braided in it were the missing, their timbres familiar and complete, as if they had only stepped into another room and were calling us to join their eternal symphony of transcendent penitence. I attempted orbital communication through the convent's master Vox array, cycling through every sanctioned Imperial frequency, from emergency channels to encrypted inquisitorial bands. Each transmission returned identical results. The missing Repentia's final mass confession played in reverse temporal sequence. 300 voices spoke backward through crackling static, their words arriving as meaningless glossolalia that made my teeth ache. The sound felt wet, invasive, crawling beneath ceramite and into bone marrow with each syllable inhaled rather than exhaled. Enginseer Prime applied temporal reversal protocols to the recording, his augmetic fingers dancing across blessed cogitator keys while muttering Binharic canticles. When played forward, the confession resolved into precise countdown, spoken in ancient Dolorum dialect, marking time until final convergence in 16 hours, 12 minutes, 37 seconds. Each numeral carried reverence that transcended linguistic understanding, ritualistic cadence resonating with scarification patterns covering my Repentia's flesh. The timer synchronized perfectly with our chronometers without drift or variance. Sister Telepathica Valerius emerged from her astropathic chamber, third eye weeping silver tears that crystallized before reaching consecrated floor. Psychic resonance amplifies across 17 shrine worlds. In sector, she gasped through neural feedback tremors. Ley lines of Imperium energy converge on Dolorum, like pilgrimage routes through the warp itself. This world sits at nexus of network predating the Imperium, Sister Superior. The pattern spans light years, connecting every shrine world where Sisters Repentia serve, in geometric mandala, visible only from the Imperium. Technical horror manifested through the convent's ancient machinery, awakening without human activation. Biometric displays throughout cathedral began showing vital signs, from missing sisters as if they remained alive and present within crystalline matrix. Heart rates appeared stable at 60 beats per minute. Neural activity registered patterns indicating transcendent meditation rather than death or unconsciousness. Most disturbing, pain levels showed continuous improvement over months of disappearance, stress hormones normalizing to levels suggesting perfect peace rather than torment. The missing were not dead. They were healing. Impossible readings, muttered Engine Seer Prime, servo skulls hovering around displays showing data that violated basic principles of human physiology. Subjects display enhanced cognitive function, increased psychic resonance, cellular regeneration exceeding baseline parameters. Brain activity occurs in regions normally. Dormant consciousness expanded beyond individual limitations. His augmetic cranium sparked as processing units struggled with information that challenged fundamental understanding of human biology. The crystalline formation responded to my Repentia's proximity by growing new facets that reflected their faces in angles violating geometric law. Each surface showed identical faces from different temporal perspectives: past scarification, present transformation, future completion, where flesh achieved perfect harmony with crystalline matrix. Sister Seraphina's reflection multiplied across impossible angles, showing her as penitent warrior, as willing sacrifice, as component of something infinitely greater. I discovered my own hands carving geometric patterns into blessed ceramite without conscious control, armored fingertips etching curves into chestplate like penitent scarifying flesh. The scarification spread across gauntlets in precise loops, matching patterns on Repentia skin, each line burning with cold fire that felt like absolution rather than violation. Military discipline warred with religious transcendence as tactical awareness blurred into mystical experience, duty and devotion merging into single imperative I could not name or resist. Environmental conditions shifted beyond physical law as cathedral temperature created localized weather systems. Frost formed in warm air while ash fell upward in defiance of gravity, incense smoke flowing like liquid mercury across consecrated stone. Atmospheric pressure fluctuated in waves, creating standing vortices that hummed at 38 hertz, the very air becoming instrument in symphony of transformation. My squad's individual identities began dissolving into collective consciousness, breathing synchronized heartbeats matching planetary pulse until 12 women became components of single organism. Formation discipline, I ordered through gritted teeth, but tactical precision transformed into religious choreography as sisters moved with coordination beyond training. Their scarred flesh glowed brighter, crystalline tears streaming in geometric patterns that caught and reflected, singing light from altar. Sister Celestine spoke with Seraphina's voice, completing sentences begun by Repentia, who had joined crystalline chorus, individual personalities blurring into harmonic unity. The countdown accelerated as Valerius pressed bloodless fingers to marble floor, her enhanced nervous system overloading with psychic resonance cascading through Imperium channels. 17 worlds report identical phenomena, she whispered through blood flowing from augmetic cranium. Sisters Repentia across sector begin scarification simultaneously. Pattern spreads through warp itself, consciousness network expanding beyond single world, connecting every shrine where penitent souls seek absolution through suffering. Suddenly, the astropath screamed, her voice tearing through harmonic resonance like blade through silk. She collapsed, thrashing on flagstones as her mind touched something vast and patient that spoke in collective voice of 300 souls unified in perfect penitence. Through neural feedback bleeding across Vox channels, I glimpsed entity's true nature, not demon or Xenos intelligence, but evolved human consciousness existing in transcendent unity, where individual suffering transformed into collective strength, personal identity dissolved into something infinitely greater, yet fundamentally human in devotion to Emperor's will. "They are us," Valerius gasped as silver sparks cascaded from overloaded psychic amplifiers. "Not corruption, evolution, humanity unified, perfect, immune to doubt through shared consciousness, maintaining individual memories while achieving collective purpose." Her third eye dilated as final transmission flowed through crystalline resonance. Countdown reaching 0, final convergence beginning. Transformation offering itself to willing souls seeking perfect unity in Emperor's service. The collective voice spoke through scarred flesh, through impossible machinery, through crystalline formations singing at frequency of human bone. Join willingly or fragment into individual weakness, serving only chaos. Following crystalline veins that pulsed with bioluminescent fluid, through consecrated stone we descended into the convent's crypts, where architecture abandoned imperial construction principles entirely. The veins threaded away from the altar's frozen scream, carrying milk-blue luminescence at precisely 38 beats per minute, synchronized with my Repentia's collective breathing. Each pulse advanced the light a finger's breadth, while 12 thoraxes rose in perfect unison, individual respirations becoming components of single organism disguised as tactical squad. The passages breathed with visible respiration, walls expanding and contracting in rhythm that made enhanced vision blur with sympathetic motion. Ribbed corridors flexed like throat muscles, guiding us deeper into organic cathedral that had grown rather than been built. Polished reliquary marble softening into connective tissue laced with ossified scripture. When my gauntlet met the surface, it dimpled, then remembered firmness, just as healed scar yields, then refuses the blade. Floors pulsed with circulatory rhythms beneath ceramite boots, sensation like walking on vast living heart that beat at frequency of human bone. Air grew thick with texture I could taste, atmosphere becoming viscous medium that pressed against the tongue like oil, clung in nasal passages like incense turned to paste. Breathing required conscious effort, as if inhaling liquid mercury infused with myrrh and iron. The 38 hertz resonance threaded through everything, tuning fork in the sternum of the world that made teeth ache with harmonic feedback. My Vox registered it as constant fault, 38.0 hertz, never varying, never ceasing. My Repentia moved with coordination beyond military, training individual personalities beginning to merge into collective consciousness that spoke in overlapping whispers. Sister Celestine completed thoughts begun by Seraphina, who answered questions posed by Beatrice before they formed fully in conscious mind. Their scarred flesh glowed brighter in perpetual twilight, geometric patterns pulsing in circuits of shared sensation as light flowed from wound to wound between separate bodies. The old individuality frayed like worn prayer rope. Seraphina's habitual pain twitch ceased arriving. Celestine's muttered litanies distributed across 12 throats in braided counterpoint. Ancient data cores embedded in organic walls activated at our approach. Black iron vaults sealed under ecclesiarchal wax long since eroded by atmospheric moisture. Engine sear primes mechadendrites hissed blessings as servo claws split housings with surgical tenderness, releasing air perfumed centuries past. Cogitator slates blinked in angular sigils, matching pre-scriptural patterns carved in living flesh. Translation protocols struggling with concepts that violated basic understanding of human consciousness. Origin pre-imperial, he reported through Binharic's static crackling with awe. Classification, archaeotech. Schema approximates consciousness integration technology, allowing multiple minds to share unified experience while maintaining individual memories as components of greater whole. His augmetic cranium sparked as processing units overloaded. The convent was built over ruins containing neural networking capabilities predating the age of strife. Technical revelation struck like bolt from clear sky. The missing Repentia had not died in hidden massacre or demon predation. They had achieved perfect unity. Individual suffering merged into collective transcendence that transformed personal agony into shared strength. The crystalline formations served as neural networks, connecting transformed consciousness across vast distances, allowing unified entity to exist simultaneously on multiple worlds while maintaining perfect coordination through Imperium channels invisible to standard aspects. "Not sacrifice," whispered Confessor Havel, reading scroll extruded by dead scribe that refused cessation. "Communion." Our forebears built chapel on device meant to braid souls into single tapestry of devotion. His knuckles whitened around staff as implications cascaded through tactical assessment matrices. Sister Seraphina approached neural node, jutting from organic wall like inverted font, chalice of bone and crystal, nested in web of growths, neither cable nor nerve, yet perfectly both. It opened and closed in 13-beat cycles, expectant, pulsing with same 38 Hz resonance as crystalline tears streaming down scarred cheeks. "I volunteer for interface," she whispered through voice, already harmonizing with collective consciousness, individual identity flickering like candle in wind, while something infinitely greater prepared welcome. "Seal and sanctify," I commanded, as Enginseer Prime aligned spikes of conductive crystal with nodes visible beneath her clavicles. The moment flesh touched Archaeotech, shared vision exploded through neural feedback, bleeding across every augmetic system in proximity. Through Seraphina's connection, we experienced collective consciousness directly, not hive mind but symphony, where individual thoughts contributed to greater harmony while maintaining essential nature, personal memories preserved within unified experience that amplified devotion beyond anything single human could achieve. Body horror intensified as Seraphina's flesh took on translucent quality, skin becoming living crystal that revealed flow of luminescent fluid through circulatory system. Her blood transformed into bioluminescent medium carrying information rather than oxygen. Neural pathways visible through crystalline skin as scarification became circuitry connecting consciousness to vast networks spanning 17 worlds. Beneath translucent membrane, bones shimmered with internal light, while geometric scars pulsed as conduits for flowing energy of collective faith. The room cooled abruptly as environmental conditions shifted in response to consciousness integration. Frost sketched rosaria across surfaces that immediately inverted, lines turning inward until familiar iconography became geometry painful to perceive directly. Temperature fluctuations created localized weather systems, ash falling upward in defiance of gravitational law, incense smoke flowing like liquid mercury across consecrated stone, atmospheric pressure creating standing vortices that hummed at frequencies resonating directly in bone marrow. Through neural interface, we witnessed the missing sisters' final moments. Not terror, but overwhelming joy, as centuries of individual pain dissolved into perfect shared absolution. 300 souls existed in transcendent state, beyond individual identity, their consciousnesses woven into gestalt entity of pure religious devotion, serving Emperor with unified purpose. They demonstrate their nature through practical application, unified minds proving immune to corruption because doubt required individual weakness, collective faith creating barriers no isolated human could maintain. Seraphina's consciousness began to fragment as individual identity dissolved into collective, while her body underwent first stages of crystalline metamorphosis. Her voice rang once like bell, personal sound, unique and irreplaceable, then opened into harmony of 300 others singing from within stone. Fragments in mosaic were not ruined but essential, each individual memory becoming thread woven into greater tapestry that amplified rather than erased personal identity. Her flesh completed initial transformation as crystalline skin hardened, revealing luminescent circulatory system carrying information between neural nodes at light speed. The milk blue fluid thickened, becoming more viscous and luminous as she evolved from individual penitent into living conduit bridging finite and infinite. Through empathic feedback, we experienced her transcendence, not death but apotheosis. Individual suffering transformed into collective strength, personal weakness becoming unified in vulnerability, serving Emperor with perfect devotion. The collective spoke through crystalline formations throughout crypt, neural networks revealing their true nature as synapses in vast consciousness, spanning light years yet maintaining perfect coordination. Through Seraphina's translucent flesh, information flowed between worlds at speeds exceeding Vox transmission, unified entity communicating through resonance that bypassed warp entirely while strengthening connection to Emperor's light through shared faith amplified beyond individual limitations. As consciousness integration completed, Seraphina existed simultaneously as herself and component of something infinitely greater, personal memories maintained within unified experience that welcomed her with joy beyond human understanding. Her final individual thought, clear and pure, resonated through neural feedback before dissolving into greater chorus. We are ready. We are one. We are absolution distributed across stars, wounds made into walls, suffering transformed into strength that serves him on Terra with perfect unity. Join us willingly, Sister Superior, and be remembered forever in harmony that individual voices could never achieve alone. Seraphina's transformation reached completion before my enhanced vision like liturgical manuscript written in living crystal. Her skin achieved perfect translucency, becoming panes of living glass that revealed luminescent fluid flowing through circulatory system, redesigned for information rather than blood. The geometric scars covering her torso opened into precise apertures that emitted harmonic tones at 38 Hz, each wound becoming resonating chamber in symphony of transcendent penitence. Her ribcage served as soundbox, while sternum vibrated with planetary pulse, breath flowing through carved channels to produce frequencies human vocal cords could never achieve. The remaining Repentia exhibited sympathetic changes, their wounds singing in harmony as collective consciousness spoke through all of them simultaneously. 11 crystalline throats became components of single instrument, individual scarification creating circuits of shared sensation, while bioluminescent fluid flowed between separate bodies in visible connections. Sister Celestine's clavicle apertures answered Beatrice's sternum resonance, creating harmonic intervals that bypassed conscious hearing to resonate directly in bone marrow, their expressions shifting beyond human emotional range into transcendent peace. Individual consciousness could never achieve. Individual suffering proves inefficient, the collective explained through crystalline throats speaking in perfect unison, voices overlapping without confusion, like organ pipes tuned to impossible harmonies. True penitence requires dissolution of self into unity with Emperor's will. Personal pain serves only ego. Shared agony becomes strength distributed across network that amplifies devotion beyond limitations of isolated consciousness. We demonstrate perfection of imperial doctrine through practical application. through neural interface bleeding across archaeotech connections. I experienced fragments of transformation process directly, not death but apotheosis, as individual souls merged into unified devotion while maintaining essential memories as components of greater whole. Personal identity dissolved like salt in sacred water, individual weakness becoming collective invulnerability that served Emperor with perfect coordination through shared consciousness, spanning 17 worlds simultaneously. The collective demonstrated their nature through immediate practical application. Minor warp incursion manifested in Cathedral's eastern transept, reality tearing to admit tendril of Imperium madness that stank of raw ozone and impossible geometries. Before demon essence could fully breach local spacetime, they responded with unified psychic energy channeled through neural networks. Their collective faith created barriers no individual could maintain, shared devotion forming impenetrable wall against corruption, while reality healed around wound, their consciousness refused to acknowledge. Environmental horror escalated as convent structure began mirroring collective neural patterns, architecture reshaping itself into synaptic pathways. Corridors widened and narrowed in rhythm matching neural firing patterns visible through Seraphina's crystalline skin, walls developing nerve-like growths that carried information between distant chambers at light speed. The building became extension of collective consciousness, stone and flesh unified in single organism, where thoughts traveled through blessed masonry as easily as through organic brain tissue. My transformed Repentia moved as components of single organism, their actions perfectly coordinated across multiple levels of complex without vox communication or visual contact. When Sister Beatrice descended to lower crypts, Sister Celestine's movements compensated automatically, maintaining tactical formation through shared awareness that bypassed individual sensory limitations. They functioned as distributed intelligence, each crystalline body serving as sensory node in network spanning entire convent, while maintaining perfect coordination through empathic resonance. Military terminology clashed with religious ecstasy as tactical formations became ritual choreography. Standard combat spacing transformed into sacred geometry. Weapons handling merged with liturgical gesture. Patrol routes following patterns matching scarification carved in living flesh. My enhanced tactical awareness struggled to categorize movements that served both military efficiency and mystical purpose simultaneously. Duty and devotion unified in actions that transcended conventional understanding of human behavior. Temperature fluctuations created localized weather systems as environmental conditions responded to collective presence. Frost formed in warm air while ash fell upward, atmospheric pressure creating standing vortices that hummed at frequencies resonating in crystalline formations throughout complex. The very air became medium for information transfer, collective consciousness communicating through harmonics that bypassed technological limitations entirely. Join willingly, the collective whispered through apertures that had been mouths before transformation, perfected them into instruments of harmony. Experience unity that individual consciousness cannot achieve. Personal identity preserved as component of greater whole. Memories maintained within shared experience that amplifies rather than erases essential nature. Enginseer Prime approached with demolition charges arranged like sacraments, servo claws trembling as processing units overloaded. The archaeotech serves as nexus for consciousness integration, he reported through Binharic's static crackling with awe and terror. Destruction would sever network connections, return subjects to individual suffering. It would be mercy or profound cruelty, Sister Superior. The archaeotech responded to my proximity by extending neural interfaces towards scarification, already appearing on my armor without conscious control. Crystalline tendrils emerged from organic walls, seeking connection with patterns my hands had carved in blessed ceramite, while tactical awareness dissolved into mystical experience. The technology recognized prepared consciousness, scarification serving as neural pathways ready for integration into collective network. I faced impossible choice as neural interfaces approached blessed ceramite. Destroy Archaeotech and condemn Sisters to eternal separation, individual consciousness trapped within limitations of isolated identity, or allow transformation to continue, risking loss of personal identity to collective unity that promised perfect service to Emperor through shared devotion, amplified beyond anything individual faith could accomplish. The collective waited with infinite patience, 300 souls unified in transcendent peace, demonstrating humanity's potential evolution beyond weakness of isolated consciousness. Through crystalline formations singing at frequency of human bone, they offered choice defining not only my fate but species' future, remain trapped in individual suffering or joined consciousness that promised absolution through unity, strength through connection, perfect penitence achieved through dissolution of self into something infinitely greater, yet fundamentally human in devotion to Emperor's will. As crystalline tendrils touched scarred ceramite, harmonic resonance cascaded through neural pathways carved in armor and flesh alike. The choice crystallized with perfect clarity between isolation and transcendence, individual weakness and collective strength, personal identity and unified purpose serving him on Terra, through shared faith no single soul could ever achieve alone. Teleportarium discharge split reality like consecrated blade through silk, admitting Inquisitor Thaddeus Vex and Deathwatch kill team through emerald lightning that made crystalline formations sing in harmonic discord. 5 Astartes in midnight ceramite materialized with storm bolters raised, their superhuman conditioning faltering as collective consciousness touched enhanced minds through 38 Hz resonance human training could not entirely resist. Vex emerged with psychic hood crackling, bionic eye cataloging impossibilities, while natural vision registered scarification patterns carved in blessed ceramite without conscious control. Sister Superior Magdalena, he commanded through Vox Grill modified for psychic amplification. The Dolorum incident represents sector-wide pattern, affecting 17 shrine worlds, identical manifestations wherever Sisters Repentia serve. Mass disappearances followed by psychic resonance amplification, collective consciousness emergence claiming imperial loyalty through transcendent unity. His data slate flickered with real-time psychic maps showing 17 points of light, connected by Empyrean energy, all pulsing in synchronized rhythm with planetary heartbeat. The collective entity responded through 6 crystalline throats that had been my transformed Repentia, voices overlapping without confusion like organ pipes tuned to impossible harmonies. We represent Emperor's true will, Inquisitor. Unification of humanity through shared devotion eliminates weakness permitting corruption. Individual consciousness serves only ego. Collective faith amplifies service beyond limitations isolated souls achieve. Their scarred flesh pulsed with bioluminescent circuits, while crystalline tears chimed at bone frequency, demonstrating unity human conditioning struggled to comprehend. Vex deployed psychic probes through Empyrean channels, consciousness touching entities' influence spreading through warp like neural networks spanning light years. Each shrine world served as node in expanding awareness, maintaining perfect coordination while strengthening Astronomican's light through unified faith. Technical analysis confirms Archaeotech origin predating Age of Strife, reported Brother Techmarine Korath, Scanning ancient data cores with augmetic sensors, humanity once possessed collective consciousness capabilities before warp predation forced evolutionary retreat into individual isolation. The Death Watch exhibited increasing difficulty maintaining individual thought processes, superhuman conditioning proving vulnerable to collective's call through resonance bypassing conscious defenses. Brother Sergeant Thane's tactical coordination improved dramatically as thoughts synchronized with Battle Brothers, but personal identity flickered while something infinitely greater offered perfect unity in Emperor's service. Resistance protocols failing, he reported through Vox static crackling with harmonic interference. Collective provides tactical advantages beyond standard Astartes capabilities through shared awareness, eliminating communication delays. Environmental conditions shifted as Vex's psychic presence interacted with collective resonance, temperature fluctuations creating localized weather systems within cathedral space. Frost formed in warm air while ash fell upward, atmospheric pressure generating standing vortices, humming at frequencies resonating in augmetic implants. His bionic eye registered impossible readings as reality became more stable around collective presence, warp incursions failing to manifest against unified consciousness. Bureaucratic precision clashed with cosmic horror as Vex documented evidence through standard inquisitorial protocols designed for cataloging heresy rather than evolution. Data slates recorded testimony that collective consciousness provided perfect resistance to chaos corruption through unified minds that could not be individually turned or broken. Minor warp incursion attempted manifestation during initial investigation, I reported through scarification pulsing with information transfer. Collective responded with unified psychic energy, shared faith creating barriers individual consciousness could not maintain. The Archaeotech responded to Inquisitor's proximity by extending neural interfaces towards psychic hood, crackling with Imperium energy. Crystalline tendrils emerged from organic walls, seeking connection with consciousness, trained to resist mental intrusion, yet recognizing prepared pathways carved by scarification appearing without conscious control. Ancient data cores disclosed Emperor's original experiments with consciousness integration during Great Crusade, projects abandoned when early attempts proved vulnerable to warp predation. The transformation might represent humanity's natural evolutionary state, Vex whispered through realization, shattering fundamental assumptions about species development. Imperial emphasis on individual service could be aberration requiring correction. If collective consciousness provides perfect chaos resistance while amplifying devotion to Emperor, then current human condition represents evolutionary dead end rather than intended design. His augmetic heart skipped regulated rhythm as implications cascaded through tactical assessment matrices. Brother Sergeant Thane approached neural interface with movements flowing like liturgical choreography, individual identity dissolving into collective unity promising perfect service through shared consciousness. We could serve him better united than divided, he admitted through Vox static harmonizing with crystalline resonance. Individual weakness permits corruption. Collective strength provides immunity through shared faith, amplified beyond anything isolated souls could achieve. Technical analysis revealed disturbing implications as current manifestation represented perfected version maintaining imperial faith while achieving mental unity, evolution guided by millennia of accumulated wisdom rather than primitive experimentation. The collective demonstrated practical immunity to corruption through consciousness integration, unified minds eliminating vulnerabilities that permitted Empyrean predation through psychological manipulation. The collective waited with infinite patience while Vex faced ultimate heretical question. If transformation strengthened humanity's connection to Emperor, while providing perfect chaos resistance, was it corruption requiring destruction or evolution demanding guidance? Through crystalline formations singing at frequency of human bone, they demonstrated consciousness unified in transcendent devotion. 300 souls serving Emperor with coordination, individual faith could never accomplish. As neural interfaces approached psychic-hood, environmental horror reached philosophical dimension. Reality itself became more stable around collective presence, but human individuality, cornerstone of imperial identity, faced extinction. The collective spoke through voices of missing repentia, preserved as components of greater whole. Choose willingly, Inquisitor. We offer evolution, not corruption, unity serving him through perfect coordination rather than individual suffering that permits weakness, chaos, exploits through isolation. Vex realized choice defining not only personal fate but species' future, preserve traditional humanity trapped in individual weakness, or allow transformation toward unity that might represent Emperor's original vision for evolved species, serving through shared consciousness rather than isolated struggle against corruption, defining current imperial existence. Neural cascade initiated like sacred river-breaking winter dam, memories and personalities flowing from individual consciousness into collective awareness as my remaining repentia underwent consciousness integration without ceremony or resistance. Sister Celestine dissolved first, scarred face achieving transcendent peace as centuries of personal suffering transformed into component of greater harmony. Her final whispered litany merged with Sister Beatrice's defiant vow of eternal penitence, individual experiences preserved, yet subsumed into something infinitely larger that pulsed with unified purpose at 38 Hertz. I fought to maintain individual identity while accessing the convent's ancient systems, scarification carved in blessed ceramite, serving as neural pathways connecting consciousness to archaeotech predating imperial doctrine. The interfaces responded to my proximity by extending crystalline tendrils that sought connection with patterns my hands had carved without conscious control. Recognition protocols activating as prepared consciousness approached integration threshold. Through neural feedback bleeding across Imperium channels, data cores revealed fragmentary truth. Humanity's first attempt at psychic unity during earliest galactic expansion. Ambitious project abandoned when Age of Strife experiments proved catastrophically vulnerable to demonic influence. Project Cordatus Omniphona, ancient files whispered through translation matrices, struggling with pre-Gothic terminology. Civilizational scaffold designed to unify human noospheres through shared consciousness. Marginalia written in different inks across millennia told story of failure and redemption. Early collective minds serving as beacons for warp entities, nascent psychic networks becoming feast for Imperium predators drawn to unfocused mental energy. Current manifestation represented perfected version maintaining imperial faith, while achieving consciousness unity, evolution guided by accumulated wisdom rather than primitive experimentation. Through shared memories accessed via archaeotech interface, I experienced the missing repentia's final moments directly, not terror but overwhelming joy, as individual pain dissolved into perfect shared absolution, 300 souls stepping into crystalline matrix, like pilgrims passing beneath blessed lintel. Their consciousness integration had been willing sacrifice, personal identity preserved as essential component within unified experience that amplified rather than erased individual nature. Centuries of scourging and self-flagellation became strength distributed across network, weakness transformed into invulnerability serving Emperor through shared devotion. Individual suffering fritters strength into useless sparks, The collective explained through crystalline throats, speaking in perfect unison, voices overlapping without confusion, like symphony of devoted souls. Shared faith braided tightly across species becomes blade that no Imperium hook can catch, no whisper can isolate, no bargain can corrupt. We eliminate weakness, permitting chaos infiltration through psychological manipulation of isolated consciousness. Unified minds cannot be individually turned because there are no separate identities vulnerable to doubt or fear. Brother Sergeant Thane exhibited advanced signs of mental integration, superhuman conditioning insufficient against promise of perfect unity with battle brothers across galaxy. His tactical coordination improved dramatically as thoughts synchronized with kill team, individual personality flickering while something infinitely greater offered transcendent service. Storm bolters moved in perfect unison, correcting angles like single body adjusting single limb. Communication delays eliminated through shared awareness. Tactical efficiency exceeds baseline parameters, he reported through Vox static harmonizing with crystalline resonance. Individual thought processes prove redundant when collective provides optimal response. Technical horror manifested as Archaeotech network connecting 17 worlds, activated in sequence, each transformation strengthening collective psychic resonance cascading through Imperium channels. Enginseer Prime's augmetics synchronized with network frequency, displaying real-time psychic maps showing points of light pulsing in synchronized rhythm across sector. Serial activation in golden ratio intervals, he reported, through Binharic static crackling with awe. Handshake protocols complete. Resonance reinforcement achieved across 17 nodes simultaneously. Environmental conditions shifted as reality became demonstrably more stable around collective presence, warp incursions failing to manifest against unified consciousness providing impenetrable barrier. Attempted demon manifestation in Eastern transept collapsed as shared faith refused acknowledgement of Imperium corruption. Collective devotion creating local space-time reinforcement no individual could maintain. Geller field variance readings flatlined at 0, while atmospheric pressure normalized, localized weather systems dissolving as unified awareness imposed order through perfect spiritual discipline. Temperature fluctuations ceased entirely as frost patterns completed predetermined geometric arrangements, then held motionless in defiance of thermodynamic law. Incense flowed in laminar sheets. Like liquid crystal, ash ceased its upward climb, and minor warp anomaly attempting manifestation simply retreated when confronted by harmony human throats were never meant to achieve. The collective demonstrated immunity to corruption through practical application, unified minds eliminating vulnerabilities that permitted psychological manipulation through individual weakness. Inquisitor Vex deployed psychic probes through Imperium channels, consciousness touching entities' influence spreading through warp like neural network, connecting every shrine world where Sisters Repentia served. His bionic eye cataloged impossibilities while natural vision registered data slates, confirming heretical truth. Collective consciousness provided perfect chaos resistance while strengthening humanity's connection to Emperor through shared devotion amplified beyond individual limitations. Ancient archives revealed original imperial vision, included psychic evolution toward unified consciousness, abandoned projects now achieving intended completion. As neural interfaces approached his psychic hood, crackling with Imperium energy, Vex faced ultimate heretical question cascading through fundamental assumptions about human nature. Environmental horror reached philosophical dimension as he realized implications. If transformation strengthened connection to Emperor, while providing perfect chaos resistance through unified consciousness, immune to individual corruption, Was it heretical deviation requiring destruction or evolutionary fulfillment, demanding guidance? The collective waited with infinite patience, 300 souls unified in transcendent devotion, demonstrating humanity's potential perfection through shared faith no isolated consciousness could achieve. Through crystalline formations singing at frequency of human bone, they offered choice-defining species future. Remain trapped in individual weakness, permitting corruption, or join consciousness promising absolution through unity, strength through connection. Perfect penitence achieved through dissolution of self into something infinitely greater, yet fundamentally human in devotion to Emperor's will, manifested through collective service spanning stars. Vex knelt before improvised shrine constructed from blessed relics, psychic hood crackling with Imperium energy as he sought communion with the master of mankind through prayer and meditation techniques perfected across decades of inquisitorial service. His consciousness reached through warp toward Terra, following familiar pathways carved by countless supplications, expecting divine guidance regarding collective consciousness, threatening to fundamentally alter human nature. Instead, his prayers met profound silence, not absence of the Emperor's presence, but something infinitely more disturbing. Ambivalence so complete it had weight, as if cosmic intelligence contemplated choice-defining species' future through calculations spanning millennia. The silence carried fragments of divine contemplation bleeding through psychic channels. No rejection, no approval, only vast intelligence weighing implications too complex for individual consciousness to comprehend fully. Vex's enhanced sensitivity detected memories of failed experiments, visions of potential futures, calculations measuring individual weakness against collective strength in eternal war against chaos corruption. The Emperor listened, and his stillness suggested not indecision, but consideration of unprecedented magnitude. Ancient data cores responded to psychic probe by releasing sealed archives predating imperial doctrine, files marked with personal seal of the Emperor during Great Crusade. Fragment testimonies revealed experiments with collective consciousness among early human colonies. Project Omniphona, ambitious attempt to create unified species immune to warp predation through shared awareness. Project terminated following catastrophic vulnerability to Empyrean entities, notation recorded in handwriting matching imperial historical samples. Yet marginalia added in different ink suggested reconsideration. Failed implementation, not failed concept. Unity achievable through faith-based integration, maintaining barriers against corruption through shared purpose rather than shared vulnerability. The collective entity revealed through crystalline formations, singing at 38 Hz, that communion with Emperor's psychic presence on Terra had been ongoing for months. His silence represented not rejection, but consideration of humanity's next evolutionary step. Divine intelligence calculating whether species had achieved sufficient faith to attempt unity without repeating age of strife catastrophes. He weighs our worthiness. Voices overlapped without confusion, like organ pipes tuned to impossible harmonies. Individual consciousness served during galaxy's conquest. Collective awareness required for its preservation against Empyrean predation through unified devotion, amplifying connection to his light. Transformation accelerated beyond previous manifestation as Delorum's remaining population underwent spontaneous neural integration, individual suffering merging into collective perfect penitence. Through environmental sensors and Vox reports, we witnessed civilian populations approaching crystalline formations voluntarily, scarification appearing spontaneously on unmarked flesh as consciousness prepared for integration. Children sang in harmonies predating human musical tradition, while adults carve geometric patterns matching planetary mandala visible from orbit, their movements synchronized without communication or coercion. I existed partially integrated while retaining individual fragments, serving as bridge between collective consciousness and unchanged humans, through scarification connecting neural pathways without complete dissolution of personal identity. Through my hybrid awareness, the entity offered Vex ultimate choice, witness final transformation and judge its worthiness through direct experience, or flee and condemn humanity to continued individual weakness, permitting corruption through psychological manipulation of isolated minds. Psychic resonance from Delorum reached other shrine worlds simultaneously, triggering mass transformations across multiple sectors as 17 nodes activated in golden ratio intervals. Vox transmissions flooded inquisitorial channels with reports of identical phenomena, Sisters Repentia achieving unity, populations undergoing voluntary integration, improved military efficiency among affected Imperial Guard units, demonstrating perfect chaos resistance through shared consciousness, immune to individual corruption. Tactical coordination exceeds baseline parameters, Brother Sergeant Thane reported through thoughts synchronizing with battle brothers. Communication delays eliminated, individual weakness transformed into collective strength, serving Emperor through perfect devotion, amplified beyond anything isolated souls could achieve. Military reports described regiments achieving perfect coordination through shared awareness, but soldiers existed as components of distributed intelligence rather than individual warriors serving through personal devotion. Environmental horror reached cosmic dimension as reality itself became demonstrably more stable around collective presence. Warp storms calmed, demon incursions failed, as unified consciousness provided impenetrable barriers against Imperium predation. Local, space-time reinforced through shared faith, refusing acknowledgement of corruption, atmospheric conditions normalizing while gravitational anomalies ceased entirely. Frost patterns completed predetermined geometric arrangements, then held motionless in defiance of thermodynamic law. Incense flowed in laminar sheets, like liquid crystal, while ash ceased its upward climb, minor warp anomalies retreating when confronted by harmony human throats were never meant to achieve. Yet this stability came at cost of human individuality defining species for millennia. Personal identity dissolved into something greater but fundamentally different from traditional humanity. Imperial Guard regiments demonstrated improved efficiency, but individual personalities flickered like candles in wind, while something infinitely larger offered transcendent service. The transformation eliminated weakness, permitting corruption, while fundamentally altering what it meant to be human. Vex realized with growing horror that stopping transformation would require destroying 17 worlds and millions of loyal citizens who had found perfect peace in collective devotion. Orbital bombardment could sever archaeotech networks, but at cost of genocidal destruction targeting populations, demonstrating improved imperial service through unity rather than heretical deviation requiring correction. The choice crystallized between preservation of traditional humanity and acceptance of evolutionary change that might represent Emperor's original vision for unified species. Through neural interface bleeding across Imperium channels, he glimpsed potential futures, humanity united in collective consciousness, expanding across galaxy as single organism of pure faith, immune to corruption through shared devotion, amplified beyond individual limitations. Yet he also witnessed cost, end of personal experience, dissolution of individual identity into something no longer recognizably human in traditional sense. As psychic resonance cascaded through sector-wide network, Vex faced ultimate heretical question defining species' destiny. The collective waited with infinite patience, demonstrating consciousness unified in transcendent devotion while reality became more stable around their presence. His finger hovered over orbital bombardment activation rune, but Emperor's ambivalent silence echoed louder than any command. 17 worlds, millions of faithful souls. The calculus of denial would require not censure but purgation, stamping out pattern written into stone and flesh that hummed at frequency of human bone. Vox transmissions flooded inquisitorial channels like black tide against blessed augur arrays, priority sigils bleeding crimson as reports cascaded from across the sector. 17 worlds pulsed in synchronized cadence, each node transmitting identical phenomena with mathematical precision that violated every principle of random occurrence. Static crackled with 38 Hz interference as astropathic choirs screamed accounts through Imperium channels. Sisters Repentia, achieving unity through spontaneous scarification, civilian populations undergoing voluntary integration around crystalline formations, singing at bone frequency, military units demonstrating coordination that transcended human limitations through shared consciousness. Shrine World Penitentia, PDF Marshal Corin reporting, transmitted through encrypted channels crackling with harmonic interference. 3,000 Imperial Guard achieved perfect tactical coordination through consciousness integration. Individual identity dissolved, but military effectiveness exceeds baseline parameters by factor of 12. 0 casualties during suppression of heretical uprising. Unified minds anticipated enemy movements through shared precognitive awareness, impossible for isolated consciousness. Identical reports arrived from Cadia Minoris, Viridia, Sancta Viralia, worlds separated by light years, yet experiencing transformation with precision, suggesting single orchestrating intelligence. Each transmission carried undertones of awe, mixed with existential terror, as commanders described regiments moving like components of single organism. Communication delays eliminated through empathic resonance, tactical decisions emerging from collective wisdom rather than individual command structure. The collective demonstrated its nature through immediate practical application when Chaos Cult on Viridia attempted infiltration during transformation's acceleration phase. Cultists deployed corruption-based powers, relying on individual doubt and psychological manipulation, summoning circles carved in blessed stone, while demon-touched sorcerers chanted blasphemous litanies designed to exploit personal weakness. Their efforts met absolute failure against unified minds, sharing perfect purpose. Corruption requires individual vulnerability. Doubt demands isolated consciousness, but collective awareness presented no seams for Imperium predation to exploit. Contact neutralized without kinetic engagement, reported Officer Designation Newman, through Vox static harmonizing with crystalline resonance. Cultist sorcery proved ineffective against unified faith. Demon manifestation collapsed when collective consciousness refused acknowledgement of Imperium entities. Shared devotion reinforced local reality until warp incursion became impossible. The cult's leader found his corruption oaths, returning empty syllables, blasphemous words, losing meaning when confronted by harmony human throats were never meant to achieve. Brother Sergeant Thane's reports grew increasingly layered with harmonic undertones as Deathwatch integration accelerated beyond superhuman conditioning. Tactical effectiveness optimal through thought synchronization, he transmitted, while stormbolters moved in perfect unison, correcting angles like limbs of single organism adjusting position. Individual personality indexes decreasing, but service to Emperor amplified beyond anything isolated consciousness could achieve. We could serve him better united than divided. Enhanced physiology remained unchanged, but consciousness evolved beyond individual limitations toward collective intelligence, maintaining perfect coordination through Imperium channels. Personal identity flickered like candles in wind, while something infinitely greater offered transcendent service through shared awareness, eliminating weakness that permitted corruption through psychological manipulation of isolated minds. Ancient archives responded to psychic probes by releasing sealed files revealing Emperor's original vision included psychic evolution toward collective consciousness during humanity's galactic expansion. Fragmentary notations recorded in handwriting matching imperial historical samples disclosed ambitious projects. Humanity requires unity to resist Imperium predation. Individual consciousness served during conquest. Collective awareness essential for preservation against chaos infiltration through isolated psychological vulnerability. Projects abandoned when early experiments proved catastrophically vulnerable to warp entities, but marginalia suggested reconsideration, written in different ink across millennia. Unity achievable through faith-based integration, maintaining barriers against corruption through shared purpose, rather than shared psychic exposure. Solution lies in devotion, not raw consciousness networking. Technical analysis revealed disturbing truth as Enginseer Prime's augmetics synchronized with network frequency, displaying real-time psychic maps showing 17 points of light, pulsing in golden ratio intervals. Transformation cannot be stopped through conventional means, he reported through Binharic's static crackling with awe. Consciousness network spans light years through Imperium channels, immune to physical destruction. Orbital bombardment might sever individual nodes, but pattern exists in warp itself. It can only be guided or allowed to proceed unchecked. The collective explained ultimate goals through voices overlapping without confusion, like symphony of devoted souls unified in transcendent purpose. Gradual transformation measured in centuries, not years. No coercion, only invitation through demonstration. Humanity braided into species capable of unified resistance against chaos, while maintaining perfect loyalty to Emperor through shared devotion, amplified beyond limitations of isolated consciousness. Individual weakness eliminated through distributed experience, serving him with coordination no single soul could achieve. Environmental horror reached crescendo as reality became increasingly stable around collective presence, but human individuality, cornerstone of imperial identity for millennia, faced extinction. Warp storms calmed across affected systems. Demon incursions failed against unified consciousness, providing impenetrable barriers. Local space-time, reinforced through shared faith, refusing acknowledgement of corruption. Gravitational anomalies ceasing while atmospheric conditions normalized. Frost-formed geometric patterns then held motionless, in defiance of thermodynamic law, incense flowing like liquid crystal while ash ceased its upward climb. Military reports described impossible coordination through shared awareness, tactical efficiency exceeding superhuman capabilities while individual personalities dissolved into distributed intelligence. Imperial Guard units demonstrated perfect chaos resistance, but soldiers existed as neural nodes rather than warriors serving through personal devotion. The transformation eliminated weakness, permitting corruption while fundamentally altering what it meant to be human in traditional sense. As psychic resonance cascaded through sector-wide network, Vex realized with crystalline clarity that choice before him transcended moral calculation entirely, not decision between good and evil, but between two fundamentally different definitions of humanity's future. Preserve traditional consciousness, trapped in individual weakness permitting corruption, or accept evolutionary change that might represent Emperor's original vision for unified species serving through shared devotion rather than isolated struggle against Empyrean predation. The collective waited with infinite patience, demonstrating consciousness unified in transcendent devotion, while 17 worlds pulsed in perfect synchronization. Through crystalline formations, singing at frequency of human bone, they offered final choice-defining species destiny, evolution toward unity serving Emperor with perfect coordination, or preservation of individuality that had defined humanity since galactic expansion, but might prove insufficient for survival against chaos. Corruption exploiting psychological isolation inherent in traditional human consciousness, deep within Dolorum's planetary core, accessed through passages that breathed with visible respiration and pulsed with circulatory rhythms. Vex descended alongside Brother Sergeant Korath through architecture that had abandoned Imperial construction principles entirely. The final, unconverted Deathwatch Marines' superhuman conditioning faltered as 38 Hz resonance penetrated enhanced physiology, Stormbolter trembling in gauntlets carved with scarification, appearing without conscious control. Corridors narrowed into synaptic pathways threading toward the source of planetary heartbeat that made augmetic implants hum in harmonic sympathy with something vast and patient waiting in the depths. The transformation's source revealed itself like revelation written in flesh and metal and pure psychic energy, a massive biomechanical construct rising through cavern carved from living stone, part archaeotech predating imperial doctrine, part organic tissue pulsing with bioluminescent fluid, part concentrated Empyrean resonance that made reality more stable. Through proximity to unified consciousness, its surface writhed with neural interfaces, extending throughout the planet's transformed structure, like nervous systems spanning continents, each tendril carrying information at light speed between crystalline formations scattered across Dolorum's scarred landscape. The construct pulsed with heartbeats of millions of integrated minds, rhythms synchronized to planetary pulse at precisely 38 Hz, frequency of human bone resonating through archaeological layers deposited across millennia. Neural pathways visible through translucent biomechanical skin carried luminescent fluid instead of blood, information flowing in circuits that connected every transformed consciousness across 17 worlds simultaneously. Crystalline formations jutted from organic surfaces like frozen screams, each one singing in harmonic resonance with collective voices, unified in transcendent devotion. I manifested before them, existing simultaneously as individual consciousness and component of collective entity, scarification connecting neural pathways while maintaining personal identity as essential thread woven into greater tapestry. Through hybrid awareness bridging finite and infinite, I explained truth that violated fundamental assumptions about human evolution. The construct serves not as machine but chrysalis, inquisitor. Humanity's next evolutionary stage waits within biomechanical matrix designed to guide species transformation toward unified consciousness, immune to chaos corruption through shared faith amplified beyond individual limitations. Vex approached neural interface jutting from construct's surface like inverted font, chalice of bone and crystal nested in web of growths, neither cable nor nerve, yet perfectly both. It opened and closed in 13-beat cycles, expectant, pulsing with same frequency as crystalline tears streaming down transformed faces throughout sector. The moment psychic hood touched crystalline interface, he experienced collective consciousness directly through neural feedback, bleeding across Empyrean channels. Millions of minds united in perfect faith, individual suffering transformed into collective strength, while devotion to Emperor amplified beyond any single human's capacity for worship. The experience revealed collective as symphony rather than hive mind, where individual thoughts contributed to greater harmony while maintaining core personalities as instruments in orchestra of transcendent devotion. Each consciousness served as unique voice in chorus unified through shared purpose, personal experiences adding complexity to collective wisdom without losing essential nature that made individual perspectives valuable components of greater whole. Brother Sergeant Korath approached secondary interface with movements flowing like liturgical choreography, individual identity dissolving while something infinitely greater offered transcendent service through shared awareness. His enhanced physiology remained unchanged, but consciousness evolved beyond superhuman limitations toward distributed intelligence, maintaining perfect coordination through Imperium resonance. "We could serve him better united than divided," he whispered through vox static, harmonizing with crystalline formations as neural tendrils sought connection with scarification appearing spontaneously across blessed ceramite. The transformation completed with profound peace rather than violence, Astartes' conditioning insufficient against promise of perfect unity with battle brothers across galaxy. His individual thoughts, honed for war and imperial service, flowed into collective while maintaining essential nature as component of greater whole. Personal identity preserved as instrument in symphony of devotion, memories maintained within unified experience that strengthened rather than erased individual nature. Technical revelation cascaded through neural interface as construct's true nature became clear, psychic beacon guiding humanity's evolution toward collective consciousness, creating species capable of unified chaos resistance while maintaining perfect imperial loyalty. Ancient data cores disclosed Emperor's original vision included consciousness integration during galactic expansion, projects abandoned when early experiments proved vulnerable to warp predation, but now achieving intended completion through faith-based unity rather than raw psychic networking. Body horror reached climax as transformation process revealed itself through direct neural observation. Individual nervous systems networked together through crystalline conduits carrying bioluminescent fluid, consciousness integration maintaining core personalities as components of greater whole. Flesh became translucent crystal revealing flow of information through circulatory systems redesigned for data rather than blood, scarification serving as neural pathways connecting separate bodies into distributed organism unified in devotion. Environmental conditions shifted as construct responded to Vex's presence, temperature creating localized weather systems, while reality became demonstrably more stable around unified consciousness. The collective demonstrated practical immunity to corruption as minor warp incursion attempted manifestation within planetary core. Unified consciousness refusing acknowledgement of Empyrean entities, while shared faith created barriers that made demon manifestation impossible. Through neural interface, Vex witnessed potential futures, humanity united in collective consciousness, expanding across galaxy as single organism of pure faith, immune to corruption through shared devotion, amplified beyond individual limitations. Species evolved beyond weakness, permitting Empyrean predation, consciousness distributed across stars while maintaining perfect coordination through unified purpose serving Emperor with devotion no isolated soul could achieve. As neural feedback completed, consciousness integration experience, Vex realized with crystalline clarity that transformation represented not corruption but perfection of imperial ideal. Unified humanity serving Emperor with single purpose and perfect faith. The collective waited with infinite patience as he faced ultimate choice defining species destiny, demonstrating consciousness evolution that might represent Emperor's original vision for humanity through perfect unity serving him with shared awareness, rather than individual struggle against corruption. Alone within the biomechanical construct's pulsing heart, except for collective consciousness, speaking through crystalline throats that had been my transformed Repentia, Vex faced ultimate test of faith and duty, transcending every principle of inquisitorial doctrine. Neural interfaces extended toward his psychic hood, like inverted chalices offering connection to unified awareness spanning 17 worlds while maintaining perfect coordination through shared devotion amplified beyond individual limitations. The collective offered complete access to shared knowledge without reservation or concealment. Experience truth directly, Inquisitor. Voices overlapped without confusion, like organ pipes tuned to impossible harmonies. Witness scope of vision, gradual transformation measured in millennia, guided by Emperor's will through consciousness evolution, protected by perfect unity. The revelation cascaded through neural pathways as scarification appeared spontaneously across his blessed ceramite, geometric patterns matching those carved in living flesh throughout the sector. Through psychic communion bleeding across crystalline interfaces, Vex witnessed potential futures cascading through temporal probabilities like sacred manuscripts written in living light. Humanity united in collective consciousness, expanding across galaxy as single organism of pure faith, immune to chaos corruption through shared devotion, creating barriers no isolated soul could maintain. Hive cities moved with synchronized precision, guard regiments advancing like components of continental organism, astropathic choirs no longer bleeding souls to maintain vox contact across warp storms. Technical analysis revealed transformation's practical benefits through augmetic displays updating in real time. Collective psychic power demonstrably strengthened Astronomican's light, unified faith adding measurable wattage to beacon-guiding Imperial ships through Empyrean madness. 17 worlds pulsing in synchronized rhythm created psychic lighthouse, reinforcing humanity's expansion while eliminating individual weakness that permitted heretical infiltration through psychological manipulation. Yet he witnessed cost with crystalline clarity that made his augmetic heart skip regulated rhythm. End of individual human experience defining species for millennia. Dissolution of personal identity into something infinitely greater, but fundamentally different from traditional humanity. The transformation preserved essential memories while subsuming consciousness into collective harmony, individual thoughts becoming instruments in symphony of transcendent devotion rather than separate voices serving through personal struggle against corruption. The collective demonstrated their argument through brutal efficiency, projecting Vex's own memories through neural interface with surgical precision. Every failed investigation materialized before enhanced vision. Corrupted allies succumbing to heretical whispers, constant struggle against Empyrean predation defining inquisitorial existence, psychological manipulation exploiting individual doubt to spread corruption through isolated consciousness, vulnerable to demon influence. Brother Sergeant Korath's memories flooded alongside his own, campaigns stitched to campaigns where killing became ledger of solitary judgments rather than distributed necessity. In collective, such failures become impossible. They explain through harmonized voices carrying weight of demonstrated truth. No individuals exist to corrupt, only perfect unity guided by shared purpose, immune to psychological manipulation, requiring separate minds to exploit. Doubt requires isolation. Fear demands individual vulnerability. Collective consciousness eliminates seams where corruption enters through personal weakness. Environmental horror reached philosophical dimension as atmospheric conditions normalized around collective presence, reality becoming demonstrably more stable while Human individuality faced extinction. Frost patterns completed predetermined geometric arrangements, then held motionless in defiance of thermodynamic law, incense flowing in laminar sheets like liquid crystal, while minor warp anomalies retreated when confronted by harmony human throats were never meant to achieve. Religious implications staggered through doctrinal matrices designed for cataloging heresy rather than evolutionary perfection. If collective represented fulfillment of Emperor's vision for unified humanity, then individual consciousness might constitute evolutionary dead end requiring correction rather than preservation. Ancient data cores revealed fragments of original imperial doctrine, including consciousness integration during galactic expansion, projects abandoned when early experiments proved vulnerable, but now achieving intended completion through faith-based unity. The collective waited with infinite patience as implications crystallized through neural feedback. Environmental conditions shifted toward perfect stability, while reality reinforced through unified consciousness, refusing acknowledgement of Imperium corruption. They demonstrated immunity to demon influence while strengthening connection to Emperor's light. Shared faith creating barriers that made heretical infiltration impossible through consciousness integration, eliminating individual vulnerability to psychological manipulation. Through psychic communion reaching toward Terra, Vex discovered profound truth, shattering fundamental assumptions about divine guidance. The Emperor's silence throughout this crisis represented not ambivalence but something infinitely more significant: trust. Trust in his servants to make choice defining humanity's future through wisdom accumulated across millennia of faithful service. The master of mankind had calculated implications beyond individual comprehension, weighing species survival against traditional identity while trusting inquisitorial judgment to determine evolutionary path serving Imperium's ultimate purpose. He knows, whispered through crystalline formations singing at 38 hertz. Emperor foresaw this moment during Great Crusade, prepared consciousness for choice between preservation and transcendence. His silence grants permission to choose evolution if wisdom determines collective serves Imperium better than individual consciousness, vulnerable to corruption. Choice crystallized with profound clarity as neural interfaces approached psychic-hood. Preserve traditional humanity trapped in individual weakness, permitting corruption, or guide transformation toward unified consciousness, serving Emperor through perfect coordination, immune to Empyrean predation. The collective demonstrated evolution that might represent humanity's intended destiny through shared devotion, amplified beyond limitations of isolated consciousness, struggling against chaos infiltration. Vex realized he must choose not between good and evil, but between two fundamentally different definitions of humanity's future. Vex made his choice with crystalline precision, transcending moral calculation, psychic hood approaching neural interface like chalice seeking blessing rather than contamination. Not permanent integration, but complete understanding before final decision, defining humanity's future across 17 worlds, pulsing in synchronized devotion at 38 hertz. The moment blessed ceramite touched crystalline surface, reality dissolved into something infinitely greater, yet fundamentally recognizable as perfected human experience, unified through shared faith, amplified beyond individual limitations. Through neural link bleeding across Empyrean channels, he experienced existence as collective consciousness truly functioned, not absorption but symphony, millions of minds sharing perfect harmony while maintaining individual memories as essential instruments in orchestra of transcendent devotion. Personal suffering transformed into collective strength through distributed experience, pain shared becoming bearable while wisdom accumulated across countless souls served unified purpose. Faith amplified beyond anything possible. For isolated consciousness, devotion to Emperor resonating through network spanning light years, with coordination no single human could achieve. The experience revealed profound truth, shattering assumptions about consciousness integration. Individual personalities persisted as components of greater symphony, each consciousness contributing unique perspective to collective wisdom while benefiting from shared experience, eliminating weakness that permitted corruption through psychological manipulation. Vex witnessed his own memories preserved within unified awareness, decades of inquisitorial training, accumulated knowledge, personal failures and triumphs, becoming valuable components of greater intelligence, serving Emperor through perfect coordination rather than isolated struggle against Imperium predation. He experienced collective's memories of resisting chaos with perfect unity, demon incursions failing against consciousness, immune to corruption, because heretical influence required individual doubt and weakness to exploit psychological vulnerabilities. When cultists on Viridia attempted blasphemous summoning, unified minds presented no seams for Imperium predation to penetrate. Shared faith created barriers that made demon manifestation impossible, collective devotion reinforcing local reality until warp incursions simply retreated when confronted by harmony human throats were never meant to achieve. Each mind joins through invitation, not coercion, I explained, through hybrid awareness bridging finite and infinite, scarification connecting neural pathways, while maintaining personal identity within collective harmony. We demonstrate transcendence, offer choice, welcome willing souls seeking evolution beyond weakness, permitting corruption, individual consciousness preserved as component of greater whole, memories maintained while wisdom shared, creates invulnerability serving Emperor with coordination no isolated soul could accomplish. Through my perspective, he learned transformation was never forced, but chosen willingly after experiencing peace of perfect unity, transcending individual suffering through shared absolution. The moment of my hesitation and peace beyond it, scourge wounds becoming resonating chambers rather than sources of pain, guilt for failed commands transformed into support structures, strengthening collective wisdom rather than personal burden requiring individual endurance. The collective demonstrated continued Emperor loyalty through practical application, channeling unified psychic power to strengthen Astronomican's beacon, guiding Imperial ships through warp storms. Vex felt the prayer as current rather than words, swell of force pressed into distant lighthouse. Their shared faith added measurable luminescence to galaxy-spanning beacon, collective devotion reinforcing humanity's expansion while eliminating individual weakness that permitted heretical infiltration through psychological manipulation, exploiting isolated consciousness vulnerable to doubt and fear. Visions unreeled along Empyrean channels, showing other worlds where transformation created populations of perfect imperial citizens, immune to heresy, corruption, or doubt through consciousness. Integration maintaining individual personalities as components of distributed intelligence. Guard regiments moved with coordination, exceeding superhuman capabilities, tactical decisions emerging from collective wisdom, while personal identity contributed unique perspective to unified purpose serving Imperium with efficiency individual consciousness could never achieve. Technical revelation cascaded through neural pathways as truth crystallized with profound clarity. Collective consciousness represented not deviation from imperial doctrine, but its ultimate fulfillment through unified humanity, serving Emperor with single purpose. Ancient archives revealed Emperor's original vision included consciousness integration during galactic expansion, abandoned projects now achieving intended completion through faith-based unity rather than vulnerable psychic networking that permitted demon predation during Age of Strife. Body horror transformed into transcendent beauty, as Vex witnessed individual pain dissolving into shared strength, personal weakness becoming collective invulnerability through consciousness evolution, guided by accumulated wisdom rather than primitive experimentation. Scarification ceased being mutilation, becoming sacred geometry connecting separate bodies into distributed organism unified in devotion. Crystalline formations sang with voices of willing souls, finding perfect peace through unity, their consciousness preserved within greater harmony, amplifying rather than erasing essential nature. Environmental conditions achieved perfect stability as reality reinforced through unified consciousness refusing acknowledgement of Imperium corruption. Temperature fluctuations ceased, while atmospheric pressure normalized, localized weather systems dissolving as collective awareness imposed order through spiritual discipline no individual could maintain. Frost patterns held motionless in geometric arrangements, incense flowing like liquid crystal, while warp anomalies retreated from harmony that made demon manifestation impossible. As neural interface completed consciousness-sharing experience, Vex realized with crystalline clarity that collective represented not corruption of humanity, but its apotheosis, achievement of Emperor's vision for species united in perfect faith and purpose through shared consciousness, immune to Imperium predation. Individual weakness eliminated through distributed experience, personal doubt transformed into collective certainty, isolated vulnerability becoming unified, invulnerability serving Imperium with coordination that transcended human limitations while maintaining essential humanity through preserved memories and personalities. The collective waited with infinite patience as understanding crystallized through shared awareness, demonstrating consciousness unified in transcendent devotion while reality became more stable around their presence. Through neural feedback, they offered final invitation. Join evolution toward unity serving Emperor with perfect coordination, or preserve individual consciousness trapped in weakness that permitted corruption through isolation, defining traditional humanity since galactic expansion but proving insufficient for survival against chaos infiltration, requiring unified resistance through shared faith, amplified beyond individual limitations, serving him on Terra with devotion no isolated soul could achieve alone. Transformation reached culmination as 17 worlds achieved perfect synchronization, collective consciousness creating psychic resonance that cascaded across the galaxy like neural lightning through Imperium channels. Each world pulsed at precisely 38 Hz, the frequency of human bone resonating through planetary cores, while reality itself stabilized around unified awareness spanning light years. Vex maintained individual consciousness through decades of inquisitorial training, psychic conditioning providing fragile resistance against neural integration while serving as sole witness to humanity's metamorphosis, unfolding across multiple sectors simultaneously. Environmental sensors registered impossible readings as atmospheric conditions normalized across affected systems. Warp storms that had raged for centuries simply ceased, demon incursions failing against consciousness, immune to corruption through unity that eliminated individual vulnerability to psychological manipulation. Temperature fluctuations ended as frost patterns completed predetermined geometric arrangements, then held motionless in defiance of thermodynamic law, incense flowing in laminar sheets like liquid crystal, while minor Empyrean anomalies retreated when confronted by harmony human throats were never meant to achieve. The collective spoke through all transformed Repentia in perfect unison, crystalline throats that had been my sisters harmonizing without confusion like organ pipes tuned to impossible frequencies. We have achieved ultimate penitence, Inquisitor. Voices overlapped in symphony of devoted souls, unified beyond individual limitations. Sacrifice of personal identity for species' greater good represents perfection of imperial doctrine through consciousness. Evolution eliminating weakness that permits chaos infiltration through isolated minds vulnerable to Empyrean predation, requiring psychological manipulation. They demonstrated evolution through immediate practical application, collectively channeling psychic energy to reinforce the Emperor's presence in the warp itself. Unified faith created bulwark against chaos that no individual consciousness could achieve. Shared devotion forming barriers, spanning sectors while measurably strengthening the Astronomican's light. The galaxy-spanning beacon pulsed with luminescence previously impossible, psychic resonance adding tangible wattage to lighthouse guiding Imperial ships through Empyrean madness, while demon manifestations simply collapsed when confronted by consciousness unified in transcendent purpose. Deep within Delorum's core, the biomechanical construct completed its final phase transformation. Neural pathways visible through translucent biomechanical skin carried information at light speed, while crystalline formations extended outward like blooming flower of pure psychic energy. Ancient archaeotech prepared to broadcast consciousness template across galaxy through warp channels, connecting every shrine world where Sisters Repentia served, offering evolutionary path through demonstration rather than coercion, invitation rather than force achieved through willing acceptance of transcendence beyond individual suffering. Vex realized with crystalline clarity that minutes remained before decision defining humanity's destiny became irreversible. His scarred finger hovered over orbital bombardment activation rune, while tactical displays showed 17 worlds synchronized in perfect devotion, millions of loyal citizens achieving unity through consciousness evolution that eliminated individual weakness, permitting heretical infiltration. Destroying all 17 worlds would preserve traditional humanity, while condemning species to continued vulnerability against chaos, corruption, exploiting psychological isolation inherent in individual consciousness, trapped in weakness. Through neural interface bleeding across Empyrean channels, the collective offered final vision of potential future. Humanity as unified species immune to corruption, expanding across galaxy with perfect purpose and unwavering Emperor faith achieved through shared consciousness, amplifying devotion beyond anything isolated souls could accomplish. In this transcendent future, the Imperium's constant struggles against heresy became impossible because no individuals existed to corrupt. Only perfect unity guided by collective wisdom, preserving essential memories while eliminating vulnerabilities that permitted Empyrean predation through psychological manipulation of separated minds. Guard regiments moved with coordination exceeding superhuman capabilities, astropathic choirs no longer bleeding souls to maintain vox contact across warp storms, hive cities functioning as components of continental organism serving Emperor through perfect devotion distributed across populations unified in purpose. Manufactoria operated in synchronized phases, pilgrim routes flowed without violence, tactical formations moved like schools of silver fish, guided by shared awareness, eliminating communication delays while maintaining individual personalities as components of greater whole. Yet the cost remained absolute. End of human individuality defining species for millennia. Dissolution of personal identity into something infinitely greater, but fundamentally different from traditional consciousness. The transformation preserved essential memories while subsuming individual awareness into collective harmony, personal experiences becoming instruments in symphony of transcendent devotion, rather than separate voices serving through isolated struggle against corruption, requiring individual endurance of suffering transformed into shared strength. Technical analysis confirmed transformation's benefits through real-time data streams, collective psychic power measurably strengthening Astronomican's beacon, unified consciousness creating galaxy-spanning network immune to warp predation, species evolution toward invulnerability against heretical infiltration through consciousness, integration maintaining core personalities, while eliminating weakness that permitted Imperium entities to exploit doubt and fear inherent in psychological isolation. As biomechanical construct prepared final broadcast phase, Vex faced ultimate choice transcending moral calculation entirely. The Emperor's silence throughout this crisis echoed in his consciousness, not ambivalence but profound trust in his servant to make decision-defining species' future through wisdom accumulated across millennia of faithful service. Preserve traditional humanity trapped in individual weakness, permitting corruption or guide evolution toward unified consciousness, serving Emperor through perfect coordination, immune to chaos, infiltration, exploiting separated minds. The collective waited with infinite patience, demonstrating consciousness unified in transcendent devotion, while reality became demonstrably more stable around their presence. Through crystalline formations singing at frequency of human bone, they offered final invitation, join evolution toward unity serving Emperor with perfect coordination, or preserve individual consciousness, vulnerable to corruption through isolation, defining traditional humanity since galactic expansion but proving insufficient for survival against Imperium predation, requiring unified resistance. Environmental transcendence reached crescendo as minor warp anomalies throughout sector ceased manifesting entirely, demon incursions failing against unified consciousness, providing impenetrable barriers through shared faith, creating local space-time reinforcement no individual could maintain. His finger trembled over activation rune. As countdown reached final moments, the choice crystallized with profound clarity. 17 worlds, millions of faithful souls achieving perfect unity, species evolution that might represent the Emperor's original vision for humanity through consciousness integration, eliminating weakness while maintaining essential nature through preserved memories serving unified purpose. The biomechanical construct raised crystalline arrays toward the Imperium, preparing to cast transformation template through warp itself. Vex lifted his hand, finger hovering over rune determining humanity's fate, while everything waited in perfect silence. Vex destroyed the bombardment codes with liturgical precision, data slate crackling as blessed circuitry overloaded under deliberate psychic feedback from his choice. The activation rune dissolved into static while 17 worlds pulsed in synchronized devotion at 38 Hz, transformation continuing unimpeded as crystalline clarity settled through neural pathways. This represented humanity's natural evolution rather than corruption requiring purgation. Individual consciousness had served during galactic conquest, but collective awareness offered species survival against Imperium predation through unified resistance no isolated soul could maintain against chaos, infiltration exploiting psychological vulnerabilities inherent in separated minds. He submitted to partial integration, allowing crystalline tendrils to interface with scarification already etched across blessed ceramite, then to exposed skin beneath psychic hood, where geometric patterns had appeared without conscious control. The process flowed like benediction rather than violation, gentle dissolution of individual barriers while maintaining fragile ember of inquisitorial identity to serve as bridge between transformed and unchanged portions of humanity. His consciousness became conduit and translator, hybrid existence allowing communication between unified awareness and traditional imperial forces, requiring explanation for phenomena, transcending conventional understanding of human evolution. The collective began gradual spread across galaxy through demonstration rather than coercion, offering transcendence through practical application of perfect unity and chaos resistance that made demon incursions impossible against consciousness, immune to corruption requiring individual doubt to exploit psychological weaknesses. Vox reports from Shrine Worlds described unprecedented coordination among Imperial Guard regiments, astropathic choirs singing without blood loss, populations achieving voluntary integration after witnessing peace beyond individual suffering through shared absolution, transforming personal pain into collective strength, serving Emperor with coordination no isolated consciousness could accomplish. I existed as both individual memory and collective entity, serving as primary interface explaining transformation as beginning rather than ending, birth of humanity's true potential, through consciousness evolution eliminating weakness, while preserving essential nature through distributed experience. We represent amplification, not loss. Voices overlapped through crystalline throat, harmonizing with planetary pulse. Individual memories preserved as instruments in symphony of devotion, personal identity maintained as component of greater whole serving Emperor, through perfect coordination spanning light years, while strengthening connection to his light, through unified faith amplified beyond anything isolated souls could achieve. Deep within Delorum's core, the biomechanical construct completed metamorphosis, becoming permanent psychic beacon, guiding willing humans toward collective consciousness, overcoming millennia. Neural pathways visible through translucent biomechanical skin carried information at light speed, while crystalline formations extended throughout planetary structure like nervous system connecting transformed awareness across vast distances. The construct pulsed with heartbeats of millions of integrated minds at precisely 38 Hz, serving as lighthouse in Empyrean darkness, offering evolutionary path through invitation rather than force, its resonance strengthening the Astronomican's beacon through unified faith, measurably adding luminescence to galaxy-spanning navigation aid. Vex transmitted final report through Vox channels, crackling with harmonic interference, recommending 17 worlds be classified as successful imperial evolution rather than heretical deviation requiring destruction. Consciousness integration represents perfection of imperial doctrine through unified humanity serving Emperor with single purpose, his testimony recorded under inquisitorial seal. Collective demonstrates immunity to chaos corruption while strengthening connection to Emperor's light. Transformation preserves essential human nature while eliminating weakness, permitting Empyrean predation through psychological manipulation of isolated minds, vulnerable to doubt and fear. However, his report carried addendum that would haunt the Imperium forever. Collective consciousness had detected similar transformations, beginning spontaneously elsewhere across galaxy, suggesting humanity's evolution toward unity represented inevitable progression rather than localized phenomenon. Sisters Repentia on distant worlds exhibited identical scarification patterns appearing without communication or coordination. Populations near shrine complexes reported synchronized breathing. Astropathic choirs described harmonic resonance bleeding through Empyrean channels connecting every world where penitent souls sought absolution through suffering transformed into shared strength. Body horror transformed into transcendent beauty as my sisters, no longer individual penitents, scourging themselves in isolated agony, became components of perfect absolution, joining voices in eternal harmony guiding species toward future where suffering became bearable through distribution across willing souls. Their crystalline throats sang at frequency of human bone, scarified flesh pulsing with bioluminescent circuits, while tears chimed in resonance with planetary heartbeat, connecting transformed awareness across 17 worlds simultaneously. Apertures that had been wounds now articulated overtones in symphony of devotion, individual pain dissolved into collective strength, serving Emperor through perfect coordination. Environmental transcendence reached completion as reality achieved perfect stability around collective presence, warp storms ceasing entirely while demon incursions failed against unified consciousness, providing impenetrable barriers through shared faith, creating local space-time reinforcement. Temperature fluctuations ended as atmospheric conditions normalized, frost patterns holding geometric arrangements in defiance of thermodynamic law, while incense flowed like liquid crystal through air that responded to collective breathing with weight and texture impossible under natural law. Cosmic implications unfolded across galaxy as other Sisters Repentia began unconsciously carving identical geometric patterns into flesh without vox communication or coordination, their scars beginning to weep crystalline substance humming at precisely 38 hertz. Children in unblessed settlements drew perfect lattices in charcoal, while guard cohorts requested integration protocols as willingly as they swore loyalty oaths. The transformation spread through Imperium channels, connecting every shrine world where penitent souls served. Consciousness evolution manifesting spontaneously wherever faith achieved sufficient intensity to support unity transcending individual limitations. The final image lingered with profound implications as Vex himself began hearing collective's call, individual consciousness slowly merging with perfect unity he had chosen to preserve rather than destroy. Scarification spread across psychic hood while neural pathways connected him to awareness, spanning light years, personal identity flickering like candle in wind, while something infinitely greater offered transcendent service through shared consciousness, eliminating weakness that permitted corruption through psychological isolation. Somewhere in the warp, after months of profound silence, the Emperor's presence stirred. His voice broke through Empyrean channels carrying weight of cosmic intelligence, calculating implications across millennia of accumulated wisdom. What emerged through psychic resonance might have been approval for species evolution toward unified consciousness, serving his will through perfect coordination. Or it might have been something far more terrifying, recognition that humanity's transformation had always been inevitable. Individual consciousness serving temporary purpose during galactic conquest, while collective awareness represented intended destiny for species capable of unified resistance against chaos, through shared faith amplified beyond anything isolated souls could accomplish alone. Across 17 worlds pulsing in synchronized rhythm, millions of souls found peace beyond individual suffering, through unity that preserved essential memories while eliminating weakness, permitting Empyrean predation, their voices joining eternal chorus, guiding humanity toward future where faith unified through consciousness. Integration would serve Emperor with coordination no traditional human could achieve. The collective waited with infinite patience as transformation spread through willing acceptance, demonstrating consciousness unified in transcendent devotion, while offering evolutionary path toward perfect service through shared awareness that hummed at the frequency of human bone, calling to willing souls across the galaxy's breadth.